The Ryan and Ryan Power Hour podcast on SportstownChicago.com.
Buddy, you're a boy, make a big noise, playing in the street, gonna be a big man someday. You got mud on your face, you big disgrace, kicking your can all over the place, singing, we will rock you. We will rock you. We will rock you. All right.
Welcome in to Ryan and Ryan, the Ryan and Ryan Power Hour here on SportstownChicago.com. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky, and the Bears had made their 7th overall pick last night in the draft that was held in Chicago, so it was a big scene outside of Grant Park, really all over the city. I'm sure that traffic is just awful.
I know it's got to be bad.
Yeah, so I'm
worse than it already is.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that since tomorrow's the last day, no one really cares about those last 3 rounds.
Right.
It won't affect traffic too much for us going to the Cub game tomorrow.
No, it shouldn't. The only thing I don't think there's going to be many people paying attention to the drafts on Saturday. It's going to be more about all the festivities and stuff in Grant Park that's a good
the
parents will take
point.
the parents will take their kids there to play with footballs and that Play 60 thing that they have and all the other stuff that they have going on.
I'd rather be at the Cubs game.
Yeah, I would rather be at the Cubs game too. Speaking of the Cubs, they have an afternoon game today
against the Milwaukee Brewers.
Hopefully Lester can get his first win.
Yeah. I mean, in his defense, he did pitch really well in his last start with the 6 innings, 2 runs allowed, and 10 strikeouts.
Yeah, he did. And we'll talk about the Cubs later on. We'll preview the Hawks and Wild series as well. Later on in the show, we'll talk about the Bulls' complete destroy of the Milwaukee Bucks.
I think that under-exaggerates what an embarrassment the Bulls made of the Milwaukee Bucks yesterday.
I know. It's sort of like, where was that game 4 and 5?
When just thinking about that, it was something to 38 at halftime. The Bulls were up by 32 at halftime.
Right.
Or no, I think it might have been to 34. Because with 5 minutes to go in the third quarter, it was 84 to 38.
Yeah. It was one of those games where I mean, even as a Bulls fan, you sort of scratch your head. You're like, how come the Bulls are doing this good?
Yeah, and then you kind of think, we really should have saved this performance for Cleveland.
Yeah, well, hopefully they can play with the same intensity as they did against the Bucks last night. Because if they do, they could definitely steal one away from Cleveland in Cleveland.
That's the important thing, is taking at least one of those games in Cleveland, because you remember a couple of years ago when they played Miami in the second round, the year Rose tore his ACL, they won Game 1 in Miami and got blown out in Game 2, which in my opinion, it didn't matter how badly they lost in Game 2. They did what they needed to.
But they stole home court, and they go and
then you're coming
home.
I mean, they ended up losing in 5, except that's what you got to do if you're the road team. First, you have to take one of the first 2 games on the road. That's a really important.
Yeah, it is very important to
and
take
if you think
road.
about this is real. This series is really is between who gets to go to the NBA Finals. I mean, that's really realistic to think that.
Yeah, because, of course, in the other series, Atlanta and Brooklyn are still playing, but it'll probably be Atlanta moving on.
Is that 3-3 or 3-2?
It's 3-2 in favor of Atlanta. They're going back to
Brooklyn. The home team's won every game that series.
Yes, and whoever wins that will play Washington, who swept Toronto, which was very surprising, but because Toronto swept them in the regular season. 3-0, or maybe that they played 4 games. It might have been 4-0.
Regardless, they were swept.
Yeah, and Washington just comes out and sweeps. I mean, Washington's got a pretty good team. Paul Pierce caught fire in the playoffs, and I still think Atlanta will probably beat Washington. So it'll be the winner of Cleveland and Chicago against Atlanta in the final, probably. And then probably, well, depending. I mean, Atlanta is a very underrated team, and they're still pretty good. But they did lose 2 away games to the Brooklyn Nets. A team that on the last day of the season almost got beat out by Indiana. So it's going to be very weird see.
Yeah, it's not as
who makes it.
competitive as that Western Conference. I mean, the Eastern Conference are the only good series on paper is the Bulls and Cleveland. Where in the Western Conference, all the first round matchups were big matchups.
Speaking of, did you watch the second game last night after the Bulls Bucks game? Did you watch any of the Spurs and Clippers?
No, I saw the Clippers force Game 7. Though.
Yeah, the Clippers won. It was a very close
three
game.
double-doubles, though.
Yeah.
Was it Paul, Griffin, and Jordan?
It was a back-and-forth game throughout the whole thing, and I think there was maybe 40 seconds left or something, and the Spurs were down by 6. Marco Bellinelli hit a 3, and then he hit another 3 after Chris Paul made a shot, so they were only down by 2. And then there was this basket interference call. I think Marco Bellinelli shot another 3 with 2 seconds left or something, and I think it would have put them within 1 point because they fouled the Clippers and they made a couple free throws. But there was a basket interference call, but they waved it off because it was touched by the Spurs player first.
Did it go in?
No, the basket didn't go in, but it was inside the cylinder, so they called basket interference.
Oh.
But it was touched by the Spurs player after it was touched by I forget who. I think it was DeAndre Jordan touched it, but he didn't touch it first. So yeah, so that's pretty much how the West. I'm not sure what games are on tonight.
Yeah,
but
just wait for Greg Popovich to unleash Kawhi Leonard.
Right.
I mean, once he starts revolving the offense around Leonard, he's going to dominate. That's what happened in the finals last year. He doesn't do it very often, which I don't understand why, because he has so much talent.
Yes, he does, and it's going to be really cool to see what happens. I mean, he might win Defensive Player of the Year. I don't
think
know
he did.
Okay,
I think he already did.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking. I mean, I couldn't think of anybody else that it would be besides him. So, yeah, I think he already won it. And the Bulls. I think the first game is Monday night in Cleveland, which is actually a good thing for Chicago. Chicago's going to get at least one weekend game for either game 3 or 4. I think they might get 2. Because if game one is Monday, game 2 would be Wednesday, game 3 would be Friday, and then game 4 would be Sunday afternoon probably because it's
right.
I mean, a bigger matchup.
Game 3 could be Friday or Saturday,
right,
depending if they give them an extra travel day.
Yeah, it depends. They usually don't do that if they're that close together because it's only 6 hours from Chicago to Cleveland, and then on the flight it's only an hour flight or whatever. So. It'll be really cool. I think the Bulls are going to get 2 weekend games. They'll get 1 for sure, so that matched up pretty well for them as far as more people going to the games, more people enjoying the game, instead of having an 8:30 start time on Tuesday night or something.
Yeah,
those always suck.
The one thing that is nice is that we don't have to worry about missing a Blackhawks game while we're at the Cub game since they won't be since game 1 is on Friday. They don't play till Sunday.
Yep, game 1 is tonight, and that is at
8:30.
8:30. At least it's a Friday night, and they get the 8:30 start.
Yeah, I mean it might be a little louder than usual for round 2, game 1, because all the fans have a little more time after work to get drunk.
Right, and then Sunday the game's at 7:30. At least it's not an 8:30 start on a Sunday. It's an hour earlier, which is always nice because the Central Time Zone always seems to get screwed with things like that.
In the playoffs, they really do. I remember it seemed like every Bulls game last year against the Wizards was at 8:30.
Yeah, it's all these 8:30 starts
because they don't want 2 games going on at the same time because it'll hurt ratings.
Well, it's because you have those Eastern on the East Coast. They start at 6 o'clock our time, so 7 o'clock their time, and then they have a game after that in the Central Time Zone. What they should do is have Eastern games on one day and Central games on a different day, because then you can do Central and the West Coast games.
Yeah, I mean it's ridiculous the way they do that, because I can't tell you how many times I got annoyed with the Hawks and the Bulls playing at 8:30 last year.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it always is annoying, especially for the people who are there when the game doesn't end till midnight, and then
especially I mean, what if a hockey game goes into overtime? You don't know how long it's going to take for someone to score.
The game against Nashville, I mean, that ended at 1:15 in the morning. Yeah, I think that game started at 7 o'clock too. Yeah,
can you imagine if that one started at 8:30?
Yeah, they'd still be playing. All right, we're gonna take a break. We'll come back and we will discuss the NFL draft results. We're going to tell you about the 10 most exciting picks from the first round. We'll also talk more about the Bears pick of Kevin White, wide receiver from West Virginia. So stick around to Ryan and Ryan. You're listening to Ryan and Ryan here on SportsTownChicago.com. The Ryan and Ryan Power Hour Podcast on SportsTownChicago.com.